Okay guys, last trip we had a little bit of issues. We actually broke two axles. We broke both rear axles, or bent the other one, had it replaced at Renegade if you've watched our ride video. On our way home Saturday night, I was in it a little hard, and plus I had the springs, the preload's a little tight, giving us a little bit too much ground clearance. So the axles, they're not a big fan of those steeper angles. So on the way home, hit a jump, and I was back in the gas too soon as it extended, and it snapped the other side axle, factory axle, inside the boot. It sheared the shaft. These are your radius rods, but anyway, I've already taken the axle, or taken it out and thrown it away. I would have to send a picture, but it sheared the axle inside the boot, so the knuckle's still fine. It just completely sheared the axle. Had to limp it. Good thing was we were, not too far from home, so we zip tied the axle, kind of turned it back and zip tied it around the lower radius rod, and it could still spin and get us home. We just had to take it easy. So, but the hard thing was, the only thing you had after we cut the boot, pulled the rest of the boot off, you still had the knuckle in the transmission or in your rear end. So in lies the problem of getting that out. So we had to take the other side back out. The good thing is that was a newer axle. Pulled it right out after I took the stuff off last night. Took that axle out, then you can stick something through and knock this end out. It'll come right out. So the circlip kind of holds it in there. Really can't get anything on it to pull it out when it's that close. If your axle is usually broken on the outside, you can just yank it, and it'll pop right out. But anyway, we got it out. I didn't video taking this apart, but I'm gonna show you putting it back together. So only thing you have to do is take your tire off. You're gonna need a 19 millimeter for your lug nuts. You're gonna need 18 millimeter wrench and ratchet or impact, and a 15 for your brake pad or your brake rotor bolts. And then of course your 30 millimeter if you have stock axles. That's what size the nut is. We're gonna go back with, it's an all ball, 6 ball. Some people's not a big, they're not a big fan. That's what they had when we replaced the other one in town. So I just went ahead and ordered another one. We're gonna give them a try. They make a 6 ball heavy duty, and then they make an 8 ball, all balls does. The 8 ball, or the 6 ball, which is this one, I've heard several people say it's better for the X3 because the angles, when you go to the 8 ball, they're not liking that huge angle jump from up and down. So we're gonna put a 6 ball, that way we've got the same axles in the rear. If they break, might go back with something a little, I don't know about better, but I've ran these in our old machine. They seem to do just as good as anything else, unless you go up to Turner's or, Gorillas or something like that. It's expensive, real high, high end and expensive. So, but anyway, first you just take your tire off, then you take your cotter pin out of your axle nut, take your axle nut off, your rotor, your hub. Well, actually you take your two 15 millimeter bolts that removes your caliper from your rotor, and just kind of set it right there, or zip tie it, or however you want to. And you take your rotor off as far as that, and then your axle will still be in there. Or if you, well, ours it just came right out the back. So when I took the axle nut off, and then you just take the bolts out for your radius rods. You'll take your upper, your middle, and your lower bolt, and your radius rods will just kind of hang there. Once you get that off, the nice thing about the X3 with trailing arms, it's a lot easier, I think, to change axles than it was our old machine with upper and lower A-arms. So once you get that off, your trailing arms just kind of hanging there from your sway bar or your shocks. So nice and easy. You can pull it out of the way. Your axle comes right out if it's still in there, and you're good to go. So now that we've got everything apart, the axle out, I'm going to put it back together and kind of show you how to do it. First, we'll take the new axle and basically just look inside your rear end and make sure there's no debris. I've kind of blown it out with a blower, with my air chuck and everything, so it's good, and kind of wiped it out. It's going to be dry in there. It'll look a little weird, maybe a little rusted, just from a little bit of water that seeped in there and stuff like that. But just kind of clean that out. And I've heard from several people that it's beneficial, from actually a friend of mine that has a lot of miles on theirs, until they strip the gears out. You need to grease it, like put a lot of grease in the rear end. So I'm gonna really grease up the end of your axle shaft and everything before I stick it in there. Put a lot of good good grease in there. I don't think it can hurt. I'm not 100% sure, yay or nay. Some people may say do it, some people may not, but I'm gonna give it a try. He said that it should be done, he thinks. So I'm gonna just kind of go, take his word for it, because he's got 10,000 miles on his machine, didn't have any issue until almost 10,000 miles. So I'm gonna grease this up really good with grease, and then I will show you how it goes in. You've got, first of all, you've got on the end of your axle, you've got like a little C-clip, kind of a clip there that'll come with. That's what holds your axle in your diff or your rear end or whatnot. So that's kind of what'll hold it in there. And that's why they don't just fall right out. You got to really yank them out because these will get a little rusted and stuff like that. But it goes in super easy. I'll show you how to do that. I'm just gonna put a lot of grease on here. Rub it all on there. I'm just gonna cake it on there. I don't know if he said to squirt it, just completely fill it full, but I'm just gonna put it really heavily on here and on the end, and I think should be good enough for a little extra lubrication. Let's see here. All right, now you just take your axle and kind of, you'll feel the gear, the splines in there. Once you get it kind of lined up, you can tell it's kind of started. Just keep it straight. You can twist it a little bit and you just kind of push it. All right, she's in there. You could feel it kind of go click like that. That pushed it, it collapsed that circlip, and now it's in there good. Just give it a couple bangs and you can feel that it's right in there good. So they come with your new cotter pin and the axle nut. I like the OEM axle nuts a little better. They're a little thicker, heavy duty. I believe this is going to be a 27 millimeter instead of the 30, but it'll hold it on there. I don't think it's going to, matter. So now what we'll do is we'll just take and swing your arm out of the way, or your trailing arm out of the way. Now we'll take your hub, which is here. This is also a good time to grease your wheel bearing. I went ahead and greased it since I had it off. I've got a video previously on the greasing your wheel bearings. And also I'm gonna put a link, we'll put a link at the video to this axle, the rear axle from All Balls. And we'll see how it does, down the road and stuff like that. Hopefully it lasts a long time. Hopefully we won't have any issues with it. And because they're inexpensive. Well, they're not expensive. They're less expensive than a lot of axles out there. I think it's like $145 maybe. Most of your aftermarket axles and even your OEM axles are going to be 200 plus. So, and it's supposed to be heavy, heavy duty axles. So we'll see how that works. But here you take your hub, and I put in Shock Therapy's toe links. Your toe link support thing, so I drilled that out. And your factory hubs being aluminum, I think they fixed it for 2022. They put a double shear, but had to drill this out, and we put in inserts from Shock Therapy. Keeps this from kind of aluminum from wallowing out and your rear end getting a little loose, your back tires. So what I'll do is you just kind of slide this on here like so. Got your hub, your axle and your hub. This part's a little bit of a pain in the butt because you got to keep your radius rods kind of in your trailing arm. If they fall out and you put one bolt in, you're not going to be able to get it in because the trailing arm will swing this way, but once you put one bolt in, it's not going to move. So you need to keep all your trailing arms, or not your trailing arms, your radius rods in your trailing arm gap here. So the easiest way is once you get them in there, you just kind of wiggle your hub and put your center bolt in, is what I did here. And now your top can't fall all the way out, and your bottom, it slides up in there too. So I've started the bolt, just put it in here, and you get your bolt started. Now you got to wiggle your hub to where the bolt will go all the way through. And you put a nut on the bottom bolt that you got all the way through, because your hub's got an ear that goes through here, and then that long bolt has to go all the way through from the back forward. So that gets started. First of all, I got the center one started, it's in. I didn't put the nut on it yet just because it's kind of hard to get to. And now we're gonna take the top. I'm gonna pull this up here. And it goes right there. And I'll start this bolt through that. Look, a little bit far, why not? Stop it there, and then you put your hub, top ear of the hub in here. Right there. Line it up. Push your bolt all the way through. All right, now you've got your trailing arms, the bolts back in. And I'll come around on the inside. And put the nut on the inside of here. You have to back this one out a little bit. Mine has washers that we put on there just because it's the toe link support from Shock Therapy. Let's get that started. Okay, got that started. And now what I like to do is I will put a little bit of thread locker on these bolts, especially the one with the toe link support. I put them on all three of them just to keep it from getting loose. I do put the blue kind that, you know, you can remove. So now that you've got your radius rods hooked back up, I'll go ahead and put a little thread locker on all the nuts there for the bolt head. Inside here. Just move my washer out of the way. Now we'll take 18mm wrench and socket or impact. Top and bottom. And then since I have the toe link, I'll have to use 19 for that bolt. You got to use the open end of your wrench to hold it on the nut there, and then tighten it from the outside here. And I'll actually go back and put a ratchet on it. I'm not sure the torque specs, we'll have to look that up in the book, but I'll go back and put my ratchet on it and really give it a good just to make sure it's good and tight. So we got those bolts, your trailing arm bolts, tightened back up. I'm gonna take my rag. I got a little bit of thread locker leaked down. Let's wipe it off. A little bit of Loctite leakage. Just to get it off anything. Or you can leave it on there, a little blue tint. Okay, we got that. And now we take the hub, or your rotor, I'm sorry, make sure it's kind of cleaned off here. Right, you slide it. Just be careful here, you just gotta line those teeth up. Okay, get started. Now I'll take my rubber hammer or a bit blow hammer here, just kind of tap it on there while holding the axle. I just hold it and go. All right, now that's up there. So now you can take your nut and put it on there. What I'll do is, it didn't come with a washer, but I'm going to put a washer on the back side of it just because I like it a little closer to the threads for the keyway to go through there. If you crank it up there, it's like it's outside of the little grooves. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the washer. I think the washer that was on it is a little too thick. It's a little thick. Once I crank it down, it'll probably be flush. So I've got a smaller, a little bit thinner washer I'm going to put on it. But I'll just leave that there for now. We'll go ahead and put the brake caliper back on. The rotors, you just slide that behind there. You take your two 15mm bolts that you removed earlier. Those started. One on the bottom. Take your 15mm. Okay. I'm going to take my wrench and tighten those down good. You don't want to go too much to break them. I'm not sure the specs there all, but I just tighten it down pretty good. All right, brake pads are tight. Now I'm going to get a thinner washer that I have over here, and I'll put this on. All right, what I'm going to do is I prefer the factory nut instead. The nut that came with that axle is a smaller, takes a 27mm socket. I like the factory stuff, so I'm going to it's a really heavy duty washer and a bigger nut. That way if have any issues, we have a 30mm that we keep all the time with us and on our ride, so socket. So I'm going to leave that, put the stock nut back on it. And now that we've got the brakes and everything, I'm gonna snug it down there. And instead of using that, I've got a bar that I'll just kind of stick through here to keep that from turning. Give it until it's pretty tight. And then you just look for your closest. Once you get it good and tight, you just look for your closest hole for your cotter pin to go through. I gotta go a little bit more. And just a fraction. All right, now I'm lined up there. So I'll take the cotter pin that came with it, stick it all the way through, bend that to the outside is the way I do it, and then we'll take the hammer that I'll have right here. that's it. Now we're ready to put our tire back on. So you've got everything tightened down. I'll put a socket on that just to tighten it down, you know, make sure it's good and tight. Your radius rod bolts. I tightened down the two 15mm head bolts there. That way you can check your brake pads. We put new pads on it also. These are EBC brake pads. I'll put a link in the description also for EBC brake pads. I prefer these. I've tried a lot of different brake pads, race driven, Amazon, you know, stuff on Amazon. Factory is pretty good. We got about 1,400 miles, 1,500 miles out of our factory pads. And they're actually, they say Brembo. So the new pads, I believe, that come on the X3 are Brembo brake pads anyway, so they're pretty good. But EBC's, I've tried them a few times. They're good brake pads. So we're gonna put those on there, and I'll leave a link to that also. But anyway, everything's back together. We'll stick the tire back on it, tighten that down, and your axle's changed. If you like this video, hit a like, subscribe to our channel, and we will see you next time.